Hello, welcome to our first ever debian.social meeting. If you look on our wiki page, our next meeting says to be decided. It's been like that for the last, I think, 3 years. We've never actually had a meeting ever, although the intention was there to have meetings. By some miracle, we've done everything asynchronously for a long time. And it mostly just worked, so I'm kind of happy about that. So the first item on our agenda is just to do some introductions. Fortunately, we have all 4 people who's involved in this project here, myself, Randa, Colin, and Tumbleweed. So maybe we should start with a bunch of introductions and...
Nobody needs to be on that camera. There are other cameras in the conference that need people.
Good.
Even more importantly, we need an audio person and really badly.
Right now?
Yeah, right.
Okay, now that...
Will at least one camera person come with me?
Good. So that was video team just sorting some stuff out. So let's start with introductions, who we are and why we got involved. My name is Jonathan Carter, aka highvoltage. I mostly wanted to set up a PeerTube instance since 2016 and try to find hosting for it in Debian. Obviously, hosting that with DSA was a big problem. And it's one of these nightmare services with lots of node packages, and yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole that could never work for DSA. So me and Rhonda have been talking about this for a long time. Me and Stefan have been talking about PeerTube for a whole time. So eventually we settled on this project where my PeerTube project could live, and from there on things escalated together with these people to the other services. So that's how I got involved. Rhonda, maybe you go next.
Yes, I sort of digged into the things that we are hosting here, mostly from the fediverse and ActivityPub area, because I was really very intrigued by how ActivityPub works as a protocol and makes it possible to connect different servers, but also with different software, and that's where I sort of thought, yes, I really would like to work with these things. And so I mostly joined from the perspective of having federated services working together.
Yeah, I'm Kyle. I got involved because I seem incapable of saying the word no. But yeah, I ended up largely enjoying what I'm doing. The fediverse is an interesting concept that I've quite enjoyed kind of learning about. Matrix as well. I think the best way to learn it was to set up and use it. So, yeah.
And I'm Stefano. Yeah, I got involved for much the same reasons as Kyle. Inability to say no, and to help look after mostly the PeerTube instance for the video team and Matrix for because that seems like the future of real-time communication for people who don't have very long grey beards.
Good. So what was next on our agenda? So yes, I think we've touched on some of the issues we host. There's Matrix, which isn't technically a fediverse service, but it does federate to other Matrix instances. We have PeerTube, the video hosting instance. Then we've got Jitsi, which is actually a very low maintenance service, which isn't federated either, but at the time, because hosting wasn't easy to get, we plunked it down into debian.social. The same is true for WordPress. It got a home here just because we had the hosting set up, but right now it can probably move onto Debian. Both Jitsi and WordPress could probably move over to a Debian.net service. Write Freely and Plume are both like very minimalistic blogging platforms. although we might not actually need both. Sometimes it's worthwhile just experimenting with something and see how well it works. But not sure if we still need Plume. There's services that we look at. So let me get the list up on this page. There's some things that we are thinking of implementing soon, like Funkwell, which is like SoundCloud but free software, and it has some nice accessibility stuff, so blind people can easily listen to podcasts and stuff like that on there. And one that I'm really kind of excited about is Mobilizon. It's another FramerSoft piece of software. If you are familiar with meetup.com, it's a website where you can organize meetings in your area and find topics that interest you. That's like a free software clone of meetup.com. And the idea is that we could maybe set that up for Debian, and people can use that for all kinds of sprints or meetings or whatever is happening in the city regarding to Debian. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. It's one of those things that I think is worth a try. So I think that's our service in a nutshell. Then I added some more topics, but take it as a pinch of salt. We can talk about whatever we want. Shall we talk about Matrix? At some point I wondered if it's ready for debian.org, because it seems like the core service is just a Python package from backports that seems like it works well. Should we maybe consider at some point moving that to debian.org?
Yes.
I mean, does things like the RC bridge need to be on? Because I think that needs extra additional.
Yes.
Does it need to be on the same server?
The IRC bridge has a patch we carry for that. It doesn't need to be on the same server. It doesn't even need to be on the same kind of network, as long as they can talk to each other. Okay. But I think we may run into more of a social issue than a technical one, moving it to debian.org. People believing that it's going to replace IRC, which, look, I'm not complaining if it does. But Debian people are Debian people.
Yeah.
It would also mean a renaming of all of our public rooms if we moved it.
Yeah.
And users.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a band-aid that needs to be ripped at another stage in the future, probably.
Or as soon as possible is the other argument.
That's also true. For me personally, I can't use Matrix until I have a WeChat or Ursa that supports it, because all the web clients and desktop clients are just too slow. It takes forever to load channels and their contents, and someone told me that it's just our instance that's slow. So maybe we need to figure out where that bottleneck lies.
I haven't noticed any difference between it and the hosted Matrix 1 instance, which is hosted by the Matrix people themselves. Maybe we can beef it up, but I don't, we'd have to see.
I do find it unusably slow a lot of the time. And it's enormous. We need to figure out what we're going to do with all this data.
Yeah. Yes, last week I bumped up the cores and the memory as well. So I think it had 8 gigs. It now has 16 gigs of RAM. So maybe that will fix some of the performance issues, I guess. We'll see. And then we mentioned too that our Postgres is getting quite big, and maybe just keeping less scrollback will fix a lot of the issues as well. And our cat wrote a nice blog post with some tips and stuff that we can do. And then we have a legal person here this week too, talked about GDPR stuff for Matrix too, because they have their own Matrix instance and had some complications that they dealt with the last few weeks. They were going to be in the session anonymously, but I don't think they made it. So maybe we can talk about that in detail with them some other time. Not sure if there's anything else on Matrix. Other than that, it's an open session. If anyone has any questions or comments or wants to help, speak up.
I'm not sure whether that's on topic over here, but I'm interested in the social implications of embracing metrics. I happen to be a long-term IRC user and notice that more and more communication is being moved to matrix. I actually try using it now and it kind of feels difficult, and I'm wondering whether we are about to lose a part of our communication community by them being alienated, and whether we should do something about it, as in kind of provide more detailed support for setting it up. Or do you think that's on topic here?
So more support in setting up IRC or
Matrix. I feel like IRC is the old thing that we've been using like forever, and somehow we are shifting towards matrix. Maybe that's a wrong feeling. Please correct me. And if there is this shift towards matrix, I'd kind of like to see more support.
I think long term there's going to be a shift to something else than RSC. Maybe we just don't know what yet. Maybe it will be RSC3, maybe it will be matrix. XMPP seems to be making a comeback and is implementing lots of the features that we want. At the same time, you talk about people shifting to matrix, but we also have a lot of users using Telegram, WhatsApp, Facebook, all Instagram, all of those things. And we have to kind of decide what's the better of all these things to move to. Go ahead.
Over the last 20 years, we've seen people switching from one chat system to another, and IRC has always been there, it has never moved, and we've been always using it for the last 20 years. So why should we be switching to the last fancy one? I don't think it's the relevant thing to do.
Because IRC has problems. We see this. So we especially notice this on DebConf, where we're bringing new local teams into our organization every year, and they all struggle with IRC. I think a lot of them end up using Telegram group chats or something. We often don't know what it is because they feel ashamed to tell us what they're using because it's not the thing we use. And we try and encourage people to use Matrix because it's probably the least bad way to get into IRC. You don't need to set up your own bouncer. A bunch of us run bouncers to try and get people into the IRC system. But it's just, unless you have spent years on IRC and understand its value and have set up things the way you like it, it's not something you want to get into as a newbie.
Also, I don't think we seek to replace IRC, Zigo. That's not the goal.
Yeah, just to chime in on that, I think Matrix is really the latest, really well-made experiment on this front with a large company behind it. Everything's open source, so I think it's really the new golden standard. And as I agree, we're not removing IRC, but I don't think anything better. And even if XMPP is coming back, it's not going to be at that level. Oh. And I hope the clients might get faster and the servers as well, and I think there's work there. So I definitely think we should be moving or having a Debian.org matrix instance, because that's just easier, as Stefano said, for users.
And at least it gives access to the IRC rooms.
Oh, yeah.
We had the same kind of discussion when XMPP came up, and there were also IRC bridges available for, or transport called back in that time, and people were able to communicate with people on IRC, and then I don't think IRC is going away, even if we're switching even if we're offering the possibility for people to use Matrix as a different approach to go into IRC channels and chat with others. I think the main communication channels will likely stick there, and we will have to watch what the sort of tipping point is where most people go to. We don't want to clutter it too much into too many different channels, because we want to have the communication available to all and not just a few people who are able or willing to install Telegram or other things. So if Matrix currently looks like a good approach to that, with the bridge to IRC, so I don't see that big of an issue.
So I don't think it's that much of a question of where we want communication to happen. It feels more like an individual's team's decision, where on-topic teams decide where their main communication channel is. And that happens to be IRC for a lot of things. My experience is that more and more topic teams consider their main communication channel to be on Matrix. And I don't say that as a concern, I say that as an observation of what is happening. Yeah, so that's something I need to deal with on a personal level and struggle with it, actually.
We've also seen a lot of those teams are requesting bridges to IRC. So there has been a fair bit of merging of the two, so that at least if people prefer IRC, they can use that. If they prefer Matrix, they can use that and have the same kind of experience in the room.
That makes me curious. Where does the struggle come in, Helmut? Because it seems like people can use what they want and communicate with each other. So
if that's on topic, I'm happy to share my experience.
Sure.
I happen to have ignored Matrix for a long time. So at some point I was kind of forced into it to be able to participate in something that didn't have a bridge. So I tried like Quaternion, and after installing it, I noticed two things. One thing was that it would take around 6 seconds of full CPU use to switch from one channel to another. I have no clue what's going on there. I feel alienated. And after like a week, I noticed I wasn't getting any messages. I was just seeing people come and go, but the messages went somehow completely missing, and I still have no idea what was happening over there. And I tried another client, I happen to not know its name, and it seems to basically work, but it still feels like it's draining my battery somehow, more than I was expecting it from IRC. And basically everyone else says, oh, just use Element. That was what I got in reply to. And I don't feel like I'd leave a web browser running all day, maybe. Do you all use Element?
I've used a mixture of Elements in a couple of the other clients. It seems to be the most reliable of them, and supports generally the most of the Matrix standard. Other clients are generally slower to do that, but often are more responsive to it.
From my perspective, both Element and Nico, the KDE client, they're also just both too slow for me. They take several seconds to switch between channels, so that's a non-starter for me personally. But I consider Matrix something new and not quite finished yet, because all the clients are also still implementing the features as it's implemented in the server side, and there's not complete parity between all of them. And also, I think in the future, when there's a WeChat plugin for Matrix. It used to be in Debian. It's not in Debian at the moment, or at least I don't think so. Carl will know because I think he uses it. But when I can use something that's packaged in Debian that works, that will be a big motivator for me to actually use Matrix, and I think for lots of other people, because then it's like using IRC, right? You just have channels, and it will feel and look like IRC effectively. And once all the old clients that we use on a day-to-day basis support it, it won't make much of a difference which protocol the servers use. That's how I see it, at least.
One important argument in favor of Matrix as well is mobile. because WeChat works on Android, but you need to have a bouncer somewhere, blah, 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 blah. The Matrix client on Android works really nice. It's basically Element, and I think the support for mobile is really what's the killing feature in favor of that, because IRC on mobile is just not the same.
WeChat Matrix is currently it's in stable, in testing, in unstable.
Cool.
The issue with it is upstream is replacing it with a Rust rewrite, and that's not ready yet. So it's in maintenance mode, but there's no active replacement yet.
Cool. Yeah, I would like to share that also there is a client, a command line client called Gomux, and despite it is not available as package in Debian, it works really nice, and it has an interface similar to WeChat for IRC. So you can try it on desktop, Gomux. And in my experience with Android has been good with Element, Shieldy Chat, Fluffy Chat, and Siphon. I think these 4 clients have worked nice on Android.
What is needed to move to DSA? While we're on the Matrix discussion.
They need it to be free software and ideally packaged in Debian. That's why I say ideally.
Yeah, my understanding is the package requirement is something people keep throwing around but isn't reality.
Yeah,
It needs to be maintainable, that's all.
Which it currently is my understanding.
And we're running the packaged version anyway because that's the easiest way to maintain it.
Yeah. So I don't think there's much of an issue for hosting it with DSA. It just needs someone to do the work, I suppose.
Yeah, the IRC gateway might be the trickier bit there. That's Node. They're probably not huge fans of Node, but it works.
Yeah, Carl says we can run it on it doesn't need to be on the same server, so maybe that could still be...
Yeah, that doesn't need to be on the same server, but it probably makes sense to look after them together.
Yeah.
On that front, would it make sense for OFTC to host Bridge? Or that it's not their business, they don't care?
I think we've tried to have this discussion with them before, but I can't remember whether there was an outcome or what happened there.
I don't think they were interested in hosting it.
I mean, I just installed the Elements client, and there is OFDC bridge to IRC. I just joined the DebConf channel through it. It seems to work.
There are multiple bridges to OFTC. There's one run by matrix.org, and there's one run by us on debian.social. And there are bridge channels, so all of the standard Debian IRC channels that you know and love are available as normal matrix rooms through our bridge.
Yeah. Okay, anything else on Matrix?
One last comment is I think if we are moving to debian.org, it will need to be soon so that it's not as disruptive, because it'll be a very disruptive change for anyone on the instance when we do that move.
One thing about using Matrix over IRC, or I don't see it as something that is competing with it because of IRC bridges, and we probably should encourage those to people creating channels for teams to work with, and even if it's just for accessibility reasons, and we definitely should suggest people to work in a communication channel that is accessible for most people and don't require them to learn something completely new. If they're already communicating within the team, within the project as a whole, I think then there shouldn't be too much of discussion what specific software people use or on top of that, or what protocol, so to say. If it's working interconnected, that's a very good approach in general.
On the question of migration, would it be an alternative to set up a new instance on Debian.org, bind the two because it's all federated, and just tell people that they should recreate an account there and move, and at some point deactivate this one?
Sounds like a reasonable approach to me.
And then maybe after a year or so, the debian.social one gets shut down.
Yeah.
There is a bit of discussion going on IRC, and Valhalla specifically points out that she thinks that using IRC plus Matrix Bridge plus Biomi for XMPP offers the best way to allow people to join in the best way for them. So using the IRC transports from XMPP for those that like to or prefer XMPP clients for the approach, and Matrix for those who prefer those interfaces, and get them all together in an IRC channel.
Yep. I guess that's it on Matrix then. I have backups here on the agenda too. We can talk about that. That's maybe more of a boring topic.
What
But
about point 4?
do we need more help? Yeah, let's go with that one instead. Yes.
So Anarcat offered to help us out, especially with Matrix.
Ah, good.
And we never really had a process for bringing more people into the team and whatever, which we should figure out how we want to do this and how we want to decide who's... I don't know if this is the right place to discuss that, but
It's
works.
as good as any. I guess we could give him access and he can start doing stuff. That's probably the best. There's not too much someone could break or do damage with. So worst case, the server goes down for a bit. But I mean, he has experience and he's more than us probably. So it would make sense.
Yeah, I have no objection.
Yeah. Cool.
Do we want more help beyond that? Do we want a way for people to get involved?
Yeah, how do we do that?
I think maybe a good first step was to get people as moderators. I spend a fair bit of time moderating mainly spam on the Matrix instance, but having more people kind of keeping an eye on that for the various servers may be helpful, and a nice introduction of what the various things we host are, and then from that draw more people into actually maintaining them.
Should we maybe do a call for volunteers on the next developer news that goes to Debian Devel Announce or something like that? Or do we need something wider or more focused?
We could even just start with a section on the wiki page for debian.social saying, interested in getting involved, come, do we have that?
Yeah.
We were looking for moderators. Perfect. And your name here is the only moderator listed so far.
Yeah, I added that section before we added any services, so we might need to do something more proactive to call for volunteers there. Also, no one reads the bottom half of a wiki page.
Speaking of, which just came to my mind, which we haven't really checked off our to-do list yet, is that we should maybe put on all these services that we are running kind of a code of conduct for it, or terms of use, or whatever you might like to call it. Most of these platforms do offer a specific page for that.
Yeah.
And we should fill those with data still.
Yep.
Probably developer news is a good idea, and I agree with Rhonda, we really do need those terms of service pages.
On PeerTube we have it. I don't know about the others.
Maybe one question for that. Are you all for maintaining all the services, or do you have sectored service? Yeah, do you care about one service, or everyone does all services?
I think some people have some interests and things that they keep going back to, but technically everybody who's got root has root on everything at the moment.
So at least in an emergency, if something goes wrong, I might not understand how the exact service works, but I can check, is it out of disk space? I can restart it, that kind of thing, and the same for all of us. But yeah, we definitely have our own little interest, and there's some overlap. It seems like it worked out pretty good so far, and maybe if we get some more contributors, we can increase that overlap and interest.
Yes, usually we started off with one person installing one service and trying to document the path to get to there. And we sort of tried to come up with a useful documentation that allowed, at least for us, to be able to take over in case something comes up with respect to creating users and things like that for those services that do not yet have the possibility to authenticate through Salsa.
Yeah, so moving on to another completely different topic. One of my goals is to get people, at least in Debian, to rely less on things like Instagram and Facebook for sharing photos and things. Because I'm not on those platforms, but I still want to see these things, and other people too. At the same time, we can use some of these tools to encourage people to do stuff. So for example, I was thinking of maybe we can say that share your favorite DebConf moment on PixelFed, and then you win, and then the best, well, our favorite submission can win a T-shirt and cap at the end of DebConf, just to encourage people to post more Debian content on our PixelFed instance. Or you could say that when it's release time, you can take a photo of you testing Debian installer on some old laptop or new laptop or some hardware. Take a photo of that, and you could win, I don't know, an ARM book or an ARM laptop or whatever. Then that's kind of double folded because it gets people onto the platform and it might get them to do testing more. So there's possibly some ways we can use this as a tool to both help promote Debian and, I don't know, make it more fun to do some work and share your work with others and see what others are doing to create some hype and energy and excitement. I say that in the most boring tone ever, but I think it could be a tool for much more than just a site that's up there that's doing nothing. I don't know how others feel about that. If others are fine with using Debian money to use some carrots to incentivize people to both share what they're doing and to get them excited about these services. But it doesn't sound like there's any objections, so let me see what IRC says.
There's lots of positive responses from IRC as well.
And Matrix, of course.
Actually, all three responses have been IRC. But I did read them on Matrix.
I have a question about how we do with emeritus developers when accounts are tied into Debian infrastructure and Salsa and like that. What is supposed to happen with accounts of developers or contributors when their status goes away in some way? Are they entitled to continue using the service, or what is the policy on that?
As things currently stand using Salsa Auth, your account doesn't go away on Salsa when you go emeritus. You can continue using things with Salsa Auth just fine. Salsa auth isn't the future of all SSO, though.
Is it that you actually keep your username, or do you have to use a guest one?
Guest usernames are no longer required. That's a legacy
okay.
of the of the old NM system, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, ideally we'd have a proper Debian SSO implementation in the future. We don't know when that's going to happen. It might be a year, it might be 2 or 3 years, but it's something that I want to push for because we desperately need it in Debian. Also, not all the services we use on debian.social supports it yet, so we have to create some manual accounts for people. So whatever the status is, that will continue to work. And we're open to anyone, not just DDs. So if you're a Debian contributor in any form, when you sign up for an account, you have to agree to the Debian Code of Conduct, and then we'll create an account for you.
Are there any other agenda items we should be getting to before we run out of time?
I added backups because it might be nice to have something. I don't know if I back up the main big server we have with most of the services running to my garage, but we also have 10 terabytes with rsync.net that we're not using. Maybe we could use Borg on there because they natively support that, or something else. I don't know if someone has comments about that.
And the other instances that aren't on the main server, the backups are kind of ad hoc, right?
Yeah, for the most part, they are synced to the main server, and
Right.
that gets ZFS'd back. So maybe something I should think about or to revisit at some point.
Restic is really easy to set up with rsync.net, so that's one option.
I don't know what's the size of what you need to back up. If it's if we're talking about terabytes, I can easily get that sponsored. If we're talking about petabytes, we need to talk further.
We're not there yet.
I think it's about 400 gigabytes at the moment.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Yeah.
That's nothing. So anything that can handle Swift, so like rclone, duplicity, you mentioned Restic, any of that can work on Swift, and I can sponsor it.
Okay, cool.
I mean, Infomaniac can sponsor.
Yeah, I get it.
Can I sneak in another agenda item?
Yes,
Can
sure.
we transfer control of the domain to DSA at some point?
Yes, I meant to. I think I might have. Yeah.
Aha.
Rhonda did say yes this morning to that. So we just need to do some admin to make that happen.
And ask DSA very nicely.
Yeah.
One thing you mentioned that might interest me is Mobilizon. Mobilizon,
yeah.
whatever the name in English is. Do we know if there's already Debian packages for that, or if it just needs test trying on debian.social first before going to the expense of doing the Debian package?
I'm not sure what it's packaged in or what the source looks like, so that's probably the first step to see whether it's actually packageable or not.
It appears to be Elixir, Erlang, and Node.js with Postgres.
Yeah, I kind of give up when I see Node.js, to be honest. But maybe it's packageable. We can look at it. Otherwise, we'll just install it on a server and maintain it manually.
So to have these online, do you also do Docker Compose stuff, or do you always have the services native?
It's just VMs. We do it, your VMs and containers, well, a few containers. That was more of we mostly use the containers for the infra stuff. There was 1 or 2 services I put in containers, but later on moved them back to VMs.
So mostly self-hosted VMs on the one big server and a handful of small VMs and heads in the cloud.
And we can have containers in VMs, so basically Docker Compose just works.
We don't use Docker, but in theory, yes. You can run Docker in a VM. There's no problem with that.
That is something I would be interested in trying to run.
Do you want to install and try out our Mobilizon instance? Okay, great.
That's what I was trying to say, but it's still very early.
Yeah, I know. First session of the conference dinner for those watching remotely. That's why we're a bit, yeah. Hello. Sure. Yeah, what else is there? We have 5 minutes left, so speak now or hold your peace until our next meeting. I don't know how long it might be until the next one. should we schedule a next meeting, like a RSC meeting or Jitsi or
Matrix.
Maybe an IRC meeting. It doesn't have to be very frequent, but we probably should touch base regularly.
I'd say monthly would make sense, even every other month.
Yeah,
Something less than once every DebConf would be probably reasonable, especially if we keep having pandemics.
Shall we try to find a date now or take that further on RSC?
Yes, do it now. Everyone's here.
Okay. How about in a month from now, August the 23rd? It's a Tuesday. Maybe 1800 UTC. I see one nod. I see two nods. I see three nods. Okay. Someone should take a note. Make a note of this. I'll rewatch this video to take notes because I don't think any of us took notes. So I'll rewatch the video and take some notes and send it out to everyone who are here. So 23rd of August, 1800 UTC. Then we can catch up on stuff that we actioned and talked about today and see how it goes. By then we could maybe have the Mobilizon instance up and try it out together as well. Cool. Is that it? Anything else?
I sent you calendar invites on a non-free calendar app.
Thanks. Well, I guess that's a wrap then. Thank you everyone for coming and see you again in a month then. Thanks a lot.
Hey, thanks.